YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we lived in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for everybody out there to understand how dangerous the digital ID is. It's time for people on the left and the right to come out of the game, known as politics, known as the left Democratic Party, the right Republican Party, to stop buying into the psyops, to stop thinking and caring about issues that are non-issues, and pay attention to things like the digital ID, because it doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter if you're straight or gay, black or white. The digital ID will enslave all of mankind. If you're a human, which most of these people who are implementing this don't seem to be, but for the rest of us who are human, this will affect all of us for the rest of our lives. And I mentioned in my previous video about Donald Trump talking about how he wants to bring in the AI ID verification, and of course what's happening now in the UK. And this is one of the headlines in the Daily Mail. Is the tech giant who gave Blair 275 million euros in line for huge ID card contract? And the ghoul you see, well, the multiple ghouls you see on your screen are Tony Blair and Larry Ellison. For those of you that don't know Larry Ellison, we're getting close to Halloween. And of course, as most of you know, I don't participate in that satanic holiday. But if you do, if you're somebody who likes to decorate your yard with scary skeletons, and you go to Spirit World or you go to Home Depot and you buy some of those ridiculous things that people put in their front lawns like Michael Myers. Well, if you really want to scare your neighbors, maybe just put a giant poster up of this ghoul, Larry Ellison, who, by the way, is 81 years old. Now, you wouldn't look at him and think he was an 81-year-old man, which of course tells us that Larry's getting plenty of that red liquid that they love to take from the young children. Of course, many shows have depicted how these big tech giants, over the years I've covered it, how they like to have IVs to go directly into their bodies of blood of young children to make them feel young. But we know it doesn't need to go right into their IV. It just goes right into their mouth. Just ask Larry Ellison. So if you're ready for Halloween, well, it's a good time to talk about Larry Ellison, because Larry Ellison is one of the biggest advocates for the digital ID. He's also currently going back and forth between him and Elon Musk, at least we're told, as one of the richest men or the richest man in the world. But Larry never gets any play. No one ever talks about Larry Ellison. It's just the same characters. Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates. We need to pay attention to these guys like Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, Larry Ellison, Jeff Bezos, who does get some attention, who I've exposed in the past, Sam Altman. These are the guys who are building our enslavement. And they're keeping you distracted while Donald Trump is building out these massive data centers, because people don't understand what the data centers are. So they're too busy with Charlie Kirk. Who said this about Charlie Kirk? Let's silence that person. Let's dox them. And right in front of your faces, Donald Trump is standing next to all of these big tech giants who are fully responsible for all of the crises that have been created over the last couple of years, all in the name of bringing in this digital ID, which will empower them for the rest of their lives. It'll not just empower them, it'll put their shoe on the throat of the rest of humanity, because we will lose all of our rights, including the right to free thought and free speech. So Larry Ellison has been one of the biggest advocates for the digital ID. In fact, Larry Ellison was asking for a digital ID since September 11th. Now, at the time, people weren't as tech savvy and tech reliant as they are now, so it wasn't really a possibility. Obviously, we know that September 11th was all about bringing in the Patriot Act so that these psychopaths could spy on us in our own homes every single day legally, without any of us having the right to obviously object to that. The only way you could object to it is by not cooperating with their technology and not allowing it inside of your home. But of course, when they sell you this stuff and tell you it's for your benefit, people don't realize that it's really the government who's selling you things like the Alexa or the Ring camera. They're the ones who are behind it. They just put shell companies in front of it. These are all DARPA creations, and these tech giants are all operatives of DARPA. So Ellison's been calling for the digital ID for a while. And as I've mentioned before, many people out there with COVID-19, they think of so many different things. They don't realize that the main objective was not depopulation. The main objective was to bring in a digital ID. This is an article from World Economic Forum, how digital ID can improve lives in a post-COVID world. They're making you do things like contact tracing. They're making you do things like social distance. This was all to convince you that a digital ID would be the best way to track the virus, so people weren't afraid of the virus. People weren't scared of getting a cough or a runny nose. People noticed that the data was saying that there was 0% of the flu the year that COVID came out. And people were saying, well, those are the same exact symptoms. If people actually are getting sick, is it the flu? Is it COVID? Is it pneumonia? Or is it nothing actually at all? People weren't spooked the way that they expected them to be. So a lot of the arguments around COVID were about the vaccine, of course, and the vaccine plays a big part into biometric surveillance. However, the digital ID has been the thing they've been trying to implement. So, like I said, they pivoted. Remember how many variants we had? We had Omicron and all these other ridiculous variants. They pivoted from that. They just completely stopped it because the data showed them that nobody was buying it. People weren't going to CVS. There was maybe 10% of the population were lunatics who were going and getting boosted and boosted and boosted, the same ones you still see wearing masks and begging the government to make more boosts. So they said, look, this isn't working. We're not going to be able to get these people on board with a digital ID to track viruses and biometric. We aren't going to get it. We got to think of something else. And of course, as it always goes with the government, problem, reaction, solution, they had to create a new problem. And the new problem was the immigration issue. All of a sudden, Democrats didn't care about the border, right? People like Joe Biden, who were on the record for years and years and years talking about border security and how we got to keep people out, keep illegals out. All of a sudden, they're letting the borders open. And they gave you all these stories about they're leaving the border open because they want immigrants to come and vote for them. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't just America. It was the UK, Australia. And just like the mental virus that was COVID, we had a new mental virus, which was called the immigration process, which again has played into conservatives so much so that they're allowing ICE and Palantir to use mass surveillance on their citizens in order to get rid of illegals because they're in the psychosis. So Larry Ellison is linked directly to everything that's going on in the UK. Of course, Tony Blair's been an advocate for this for a long time, and now this is coming in the UK via their new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Starmer. And I want to play this speech for you and listen to the arrogance of these people. And listen to how they threaten you, just like they threatened you during COVID. They said, you're going to go and do this or else. You're going to go and do this or else. Well, there was pushback, and they pivoted. And now what people need to do is push back. He's telling you you're not going to be able to have a job, and that's the way it is. You won't work by the year 2029 unless you have a digital ID in the UK.
You will all have issues in your own countries. But in Britain, it's illegal migration. And I suspect that may be the same in a number of other countries. For too many years, it's been too easy for people to come here, slip into the shadow economy, and remain here illegally. Because, frankly, we've been squeamish about saying things that are clearly true. It's not just that it's not compassionate left-wing politics to rely on labour that exploits foreign workers and undercuts fair wages, but the simple fact that every nation needs to have control over its borders. We do need to know who is in our country. Our immigration system does need to be fair if we want to maintain that binding contract that our politics is built on. Otherwise, it undermines trust, undermines people's faith that we're on their side, and their belief that the state can and will work for them. And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, let him spell it out as he puts his hands in the position of the triangle of power as he says, you won't be able to work in the UK. Now, there's petitions out there where many people are signing these petitions because this is an issue where the left and the right should be on board. And I can't emphasize this enough, that the left has to look at this as something that, well, if Donald Trump has that type of power to silence people and do all this stuff, then they shouldn't want to be in it. And Republicans have to think the same way, since they're in the psychosis, about someone like Obama or Biden being in power and how silenced people were during COVID. We can't allow these people to have this type of power. So a petition does zero. But you know what actually does something? Calling their bluff and not complying. Saying, you know what, you're going to do this in 2029, then we're going to form our own society. We don't need you anymore. And that makes them pivot again because they have to keep control over you. And they have a lot of control now because of the internet, because of technology, and they want more. And we can't give them more. We can't expect society to suddenly shut off the internet. But if people do and people resist, then they'll pull back the reins because they still obviously have a lot of control over people's minds and they can't lose that. But if people don't comply and people say, that's fine, we won't work in your society. We'll just start our own businesses with one another and we'll barter with one another and trade resources, etc. with one another. We'll go back to the Little House of the Prairie days and we'll shut off the internet until you decide that you're not going to pass a digital ID and you decide you're going to leave us alone. And then maybe we'll participate again in your society, even though none of us should be participating in their society. In fact, you want to talk about mental health and all the stuff going on in the world. The real disease is social media. The real disease is the internet. And I'm not being a hypocrite. I'm aware that I'm speaking to you through the internet, but I'm using this means, and I'm trying to use this means for good to help people wake up because there's so many people in the psychosis of listening to these news stories and not paying attention to the real threat to humanity, which is this big tech push that's happening right next to Donald Trump. He's standing side by side on day one of his presidency with Larry Ellison. He's standing right next to Sam Altman, okay? For those of you that don't understand, you're looking around going, I don't understand what's so bad about a digital ID. What's the big deal? This is from the World Economic Forum during COVID, when they pushed that article saying how the digital ID could really help us all take care of COVID. Look what the digital identity is connected to. It's connected to smart cities, healthcare, financial services, banking, food, okay, being able to buy and access food, being able to travel and mobility, having the ability to travel. You won't be able to without a digital ID. You'll be able to get food. You won't be able to have financial services like banking. You'll be able to have healthcare, okay? Their smart cities will run on the digital identities, so you won't be able to enter these smart cities, which you don't want to enter anyway, but it's a threat against you saying that all this stuff is going to run through a digital identity. Telecommunications, e-government, social platforms, all of it, e-commerce. This is what they are trying to implement and have been trying to implement. This is a control system where they could freeze bank accounts, where they could shut you out from buying groceries if you write something online that is anti-government. They could do whatever they want to you, and it's about behavioral control. That's the name of the game. Here's Larry Ellison talking about just this and how if we bring in this massive surveillance state, it'll affect people's behaviors because people will be forced to be good little citizens because we'll be watching you 24/7, including when you try to take a leak.
Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. I think we have a squad car here someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video, by the way, and the camera's always on. You don't turn it on and off. And by the way you turn it on, you can't turn it on. I'm going to the bathroom. Oracle, I need 2 minutes to take a bathroom break, and we'll turn it off. The truth is, we don't really turn it off. What we do is we record it so no one can see it. But no one can get into that recording without a court order.
That's the world that these people are trying to create, and they're doing it right in front of you. These projects like Stargate, these $500 billion projects, are being pushed by Donald Trump. And they don't want you to pay attention to it, so they keep telling you these things and talking about those things. The left's doing this, the right's doing that, and the alt-right media is taking their orders directly from the CIA, and that's what they're keeping you stuck in. While they're moving forward with these billion-dollar data centers that, if you ask anybody in the streets, they don't know what that means. These data centers are the surveillance state that Trump is bringing in. This is the AI governance. In other words, every camera everywhere, all of this data is going to go into these data centers. You'll never be able to escape. In other words, every movement you make, every thought you put on the internet will all be monitored in these data centers. You're the data going into these data centers. And included in your data, we should also not forget on day one of Trump's presidency how Larry Ellison went on stage next to Donald Trump at the White House and talked about curing cancer and gene editing, right? Immediately on day one, talking about how Oracle wants your DNA. And they want one big Oracle system for AI to study. And all of that will be in the data centers as well.
One of the most exciting things we're working on, using the tools that Sam and Masa are providing, is a cancer vaccine. It's very interesting. It turns out, I'll be quick, all of our cancers, cancer tumors, little fragments of those tumors float around in your blood. So you can do early cancer detection. If you can do it using AI, you can do early cancer detection with a blood test. And using AI to look at the blood test, you can find the cancers that are actually seriously threatening the person. So we can, again, cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
So that's what Oracle wants. That's what Stargate is all about. That's what these data centers are about. And it starts with behavioral control. We have Peter Thiel buddied up with Donald Trump. We have Larry Ellison buddied up with Donald Trump. We have Larry Fink buddied up with Donald Trump. And with Peter Thiel comes Alex Karp of Palantir. Isn't it interesting that every one of these people who are billionaires, who are working with the White House, who have been given authority in the U.S. military by Donald Trump, all of them are talking about you and me and how they want to control our behavior. And people don't think far with that. They go, whatever, we want people to be good people. That's not what they're trying to implement. They're trying to make sure that you don't question Big Brother or big government. You don't question government overreach, because if you do, you're going to get slapped on the wrist. They're going to have the reins and you're going to be cattle to them. And that's why people have to come out of the left and right and realize these people are not going to stand up for LGBTQ plus just as much as they're not going to stand up for Christians. They're keeping us all fighting with one another so that they can bring this in, so that they can manipulate your behavior into being good little citizens, which means act like the sheeple in China. Don't question Big Brother or you'll be punished.
Citizens will be on their best behavior.
Behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. What we are doing internally is, if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted. Okay, you have to force behaviors, and if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. Behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors.
What we do is we use what legal scholars call predicate-based research. So we would look at you, and then we would go out and say, there's lots of different things in your life that may be indicative of someone involved in bad behavior.
Then we were asked if we were willing to supply our product philanthropically, basically for free, and I was very in favor of this because our primary mission is, in fact, to set a global standard for the world for behavior.
When we built PG, which single-handedly stopped the rise of the far right in Europe, we built Foundry, which was used to distribute the COVID vaccine and saved millions of lives globally.
Central question, in my view, of civil liberties is how, it's not if the government has data, because let's assume the government has as much data as a health insurance company. It's how is that data being used? Is it being used in a way that's lawful? Meaning, do they have the right to use it? And is it being migrated into places it's not allowed to be used? We allow the enforcement of rules that government ought to enforce. And by the way, my experience is they want to enforce, or at the very least know they need to enforce. And if it's framed in that way, then you can have what is the ultimate Silicon Valley solution.
And that's all Donald Trump's buddies. These people are all aligned with Trump, and they go, he's not going to bring it in, though. He's not going to bring it in. Oh, right, he was just over in the UK with the Prime Minister last week, talking about bringing in AI and working together. That's what this AI infrastructure is. This is what AI governance is. And then when you think about Palantir, that's the end game. Palantir is getting put in a spotlight. You may have noticed their stock is booming by design because they want Palantir to be a household name, just like Apple, a corporation. They want you to think it's a corporation and that it's not DARPA, that it's not the deep state working here. They want you to think it's just a company that's got really good technology. It's going to help us move forward in society. But that's not what it's there for. It's there for predictive policing. Things like the Gotham Project. How Palantir is really it's really Israeli surveillance is what it actually is. And people out there only know the word Palantir, the name Palantir, because they're trying to make them into heroes in America. That ICE is paying Palantir, and Palantir is building out this big immigration OS surveillance platform. So people are going, that's great. Let's get rid of these immigrants. Let's get rid of them now. That's what the people in the psychosis say. Let's get rid of them. We don't need them here. We don't want them here. Okay. Well, obviously there's, something to illegal immigration and everything else. Yeah, it is a problem, but it's a government created problem. They could easily stop this without digital IDs, without Palantir. It's pretty easy, right? I mean, you ever try to walk into Canada? You can't, right? You got to get through, you're going to get caught at the border and well, what's the problem here? Well, the problem here is that they're letting people in. They're paying people to come in so that they could bring this in. And now Palantir is getting put on us into a spotlight. Oh, Palantir is helping arrest all these people. But really what Palantir is doing is it's compiling data on all Americans, me and you, not just illegal immigrants. And what is this leading to? Well, this is leading to what they want, which is predictive policing, which most people don't understand what that means. Well, let me explain. Predictive policing is the thought police, which means when the media starts to turn the lever on who a terrorist is in this country, like they've done over the last 8 years. Think about 10 years ago. A terrorist was a guy in a cave, right, looking like Osama bin Laden. That's a terrorist. Then, when Biden was president, what was a terrorist? Conservative voters. What? And all the Democrats were like, yeah, they are. Yep, the insurrection, which again, a very obvious black ops government operation. And now what's a terrorist? Left wings are terrorists, right? So they're pretty much, they've told you that all citizens are now terrorists, right? And they can continue to turn that whatever way they want. So if you're now left wings are terrorists, well, if you're trans and you're online, well, guess what? You're going to be put on a watch list, not just a watch list. You could be arrested ahead of time because the government could say, well, our data from AI is telling us that the person who's trans, who's online reading about Columbine, might be likely to go shoot up a school. So we're going to arrest him and prevent the school shooting. And everyone's going to cheer and go, yeah, arrest him. He's trans. And then they could put a Dem in power, whatever they feel like doing, and say, same thing. Oh, conspiracy theorists, lunatics, like a call for an uprising are online talking about the government conspiring against the people, how the nations conspire. That's dangerous. We're going to arrest him before we have some type of situation like, they'll just say like the Unabomber or something like that because he's anti-tech, right? And then they'll arrest me ahead of time. It's a world that we've seen in Minority Report that looks like this, and it'll be marketed like this, and the sheeple will eat it up. Because remember, these people are so easily marketable. They don't realize, when they watch these big pharma commercials, they're running on the beach, they're holding hands, they're kissing, waterfalls. And they're like, yes, this pill will help your sex life. And they go, okay. It also might give you dementia, diarrhea, permanent brain damage. And they read off 75 different side effects and nobody pays attention. They still buy the product, right? Well, this is how they're going to market pre-crime to these people and how it can save you from school shootings and all these other things that don't actually occur, that the government actually carries out on their own, but they make you think they occur so they could bring in things like this.
Imagine a world without murder.
I lost my best friend.
I lost my aunt.
I lost my dad.
I lost my father.
I lost my wife.
Just 6 years ago, the homicide rate in this country had reached epidemic proportions. It seemed that only a miracle could stop the bloodshed. But instead of one miracle, we were given 3, the precognitives. Within just 1 month under the pre-crime program, the murder rate in the District of Columbia was reduced 90%.
They were going to be waiting for me in the car.
He was going to rape me.
I was going to be stabbed.
Right here. Within a year, pre-crime effectively stopped murder in our nation's capital.
In the 6 years we've been conducting our little experiment, there hasn't been a single murder.
And now pre-crime can work for you.
We want to make absolutely certain that every American can bank on the utter infallibility of this system, and to ensure that what keeps us safe will also keep us free.
Pre-crime? It works.
It works.
It works.
It works.
It works.
On Tuesday, April 22nd, vote yes on the National Pre-Crime Initiative.
So this is the world they want. And it all starts with a digital ID. And that might blow your mind. Well, how do you get to pre-crime and all that stuff? With a digital ID, everything you do online is monitored and tracked. And you might say, well, I don't do anything bad. Oh, yeah, well, maybe you watch too many true crimes. Maybe you watch those crime shows and you research that type of stuff. Oh, guess what? You could be labeled a threat. They're way too into these crime shows. They're watching way too many of it. We'll arrest them because we think that potentially they could be a threat. Oh, this person's online and they're reading about weather modification from the government. Oh, well, that's too much of a threat. It doesn't matter what it is. They're going to push you and force behaviors, like Larry Fink said, which will force you to just be a robot and not be you and never critically think and never do any research on your own. Just be a little piece of meat like the government wants you to be. Be cattle for them. Be an ant that they could squash in a moment's notice and freeze your bank account. They will have full control over all citizens with a digital ID. And they're going to bring it in different ways. They're going to use things to manipulate Christians in America like they already have. Oh, Texas is a conservative state. The porn sites. Oh, yeah, the porn site. How about you shut down the porn industry? You know, wouldn't that be beneficial? Oh, we can't do that. But what we can do is we could force kids to show age verification online and block them from going on there. Oh, what does that mean? Well, it means we'll need digital IDs for the parents and the kids. That way we can see who's who and we can tell what age they are and we'll tell you what they can and cannot look at. And we'll use porn as an example. And instead of asking the normal question of why do we even have it in the first place, we'll just say, well, it's there and we want to protect your kids from porn. Everyone will go, yeah, that's a great idea. We don't want kids looking at that. Okay, we'll get a digital ID. Or like the stuff in Australia, the social media. Everyone's offing themselves. These kids are getting bullied online. Let's get them off social media. Well, they don't really want you off social media, but they just wanted you to agree with that social media is poison. So that they could say, okay, well, we need age verification so your kids can't create an account until they're 16. Then, of course, everyone will have a digital ID and they'll say, well, social media is actually really beneficial all of a sudden. Now the kids can get on at 12. Now that everyone has a digital ID, we could make sure even your 5-year-old has digital ID that, that they can't get on when they're 8, but we'll make sure at 12 they can. And that's how it goes. They just create these psychoses in your mind to convince you that what's best for you is what they're telling you, which is a digital ID, but it's not. It's the enslavement of humanity. And all these big tech guys have been wanting it and wanting it and wanting it. And you don't hear the alt-right talk about it. They'll talk to you about a tranny and who could play men's sports and all this ridiculous stuff because it keeps you dumbed down. It keeps you unaware of what they're really doing right in front of your face. They're building this out. That's what the data centers are for. It's the surveillance state, the golden dome Trump speaks of. It's not to block missiles from the sky. It's to bring in Skynet, literally. That's what they're doing. That's what Musk is doing. That's what Oracle is doing. That's what Sam Altman of OpenAI is doing. All of them. And you see big tech and how in front of our faces they are? And Zuckerberg, et cetera, these meta data centers that they're building at. These are massive. And they're going to suck all the electricity down. And you're not going to realize, wait, why all of a sudden are we rationing our electricity? Well, because of the climate, they're going to tell you. Because of climate change. We all have to shut our electricity off. Oh, there's all this, there's droughts and stuff, because all the resources are going to have to, go to these data centers to help cool, the chips and everything else. Oh, but you won't know because they won't tell you that. They'll just keep you dumbed down. Then they'll shut people like me down for the 90th time, 100th time, 120th time, right? This is the world we're living in, folks. And if people don't wake up to what they're doing and they continue fighting, hating their neighbor because they have a flag of a politician they don't like in their front lawn, then you are part of the problem. But you don't always have to be a part of the problem. You can come out of her. Stop pretending like this is the Giants and the Cowboys playing in a football game. You're not on a team. The people you're rooting for, the side you're on is working with the other side behind your back. And what they're doing is implementing what they want, this new government control mechanism where the world looks like China and everyone has a social credit score and everybody's frozen out of this and blocked out of that and eventually arrested for thought. And it sounds crazy. It sounds dystopian, but it's the truth. And it's right in front of our faces to see. So Larry Ellison, of course, has his hand in what's going on in the UK. And while people might fill out petitions, the time now is to start saying, no, you don't need to even get fired up about it. You just say, no, none of us are participating in this. And if you have a problem with it, we'll leave your society. We don't need to be a part of your society anymore. That is an answer. People say, it's not an answer. No, it is an answer. It is an answer. You don't play their game anymore. You don't consent. You start realizing your vote doesn't count, that these are a small group of people who have gained control over your minds to make you think that they're in charge. But they're not in charge. They're not even elected. They run and network through secret societies like Freemasonry, all the way from the children of the D. Malay and the Rainbow Girls and the Job's Daughters all the way to the top of the pyramid. And these people don't have the type of control they think, but they have control over the minds. And if they have control over your minds, then they can convince you to enslave yourself without you realizing it. And when it's too late, there'll be no going back. Because once a digital ID is in place, there's no going back. Once this surveillance grid is in place, there's no going back. Because they'll make it a federal offense. They'll make it, oh, you're smashing some of our towers down. You're smashing some of our surveillance cameras down. You're trying to get EMP weapons to short circuit our robots. That'd be worse than committing mass murder in this country. You'll get life. You'll get executed in town square in front of everyone so they could set an example. Don't mess with our technology because it's more important than a human life. This is the world, ladies and gentlemen, 2025. Share this video. Help wake people up. I thank you guys for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.